Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Durbin, I want to start. You've heard the claim that U.S. liquid natural gas exports could result in the kind of inflated LNG prices that we've seen in Australia or that Australia has experienced. Could you talk a little bit about and explain to the panel why the Australia example is not directly analogous to the U.S. markets, particularly in light of the dramatic differences in market size?
Sure. No, I appreciate the question, Senator. And I would say it would be like comparing apples and oranges, but I'm not even sure they're both fruits. If you look at the size of the economy, in GDP, we're more than 10 times greater. Our production of natural gas is more than 11 times greater. The infrastructure that we have in the U.S. for being able to produce natural gas is just there is no comparison, which allows us to be able to produce the gas at a much lower cost. And I think the real important point here is that right now what Australia is experiencing is because they are exporting literally 50%, in fact, more than 50% of what they're producing, they are exporting. Even in the most, in the EIA projections show that we'll be exporting only 9%, between 9 and 10% of our production in 2040. So I think there really is no comparison to make there, and no threat that the United States would end up experiencing the same type of.
And my understanding is that our market is roughly about 40 times the size of Australia. Right. And we're talking about much lower levels of overall exports, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Mr. Smith, I want to turn to you real quick. If it were enacted, this legislation is passed and signed, would you expect our bill to change the number of applications for exports to non-FTA countries that eventually would be approved or disapproved by DOE?
Well, thanks for the question, Senator. I honestly think it would be impossible for me to determine, based on the language, if this is going to impact the number of final applicants. It would depend on the applicants, on the conditions at the time, et cetera. So I would demur from making any prediction or forecast because these are case-by-case evaluations that we make in a way that's very serious.
Right. As you know, our bill also requires DOE to publish the list of countries that receive shipments of liquid natural gas from the United States. Do you have a view as to whether or not that would be important information for the public to have access to?
We think that more transparency is good. So we've endeavored to create a process that's open, that is transparent, and that makes all this information available to potential interveners. So we think that is important.
Great. I'll have one last question for you, and then I'll yield back the remainder of my time. One of my interests is making sure that we continue to grow jobs while sort of reordering our energy infrastructure to recognize the challenges that we have with carbon pollution and climate change. Natural gas has sort of a unique place within those changes. We have limited capacity right now to do electrical storage, for example, but natural gas allows us to seam together different sources of energy in more real time, much more effectively than old-fashioned coal generation, just because of how fast you can ramp up and down the turbines. Do you want to talk about a little bit about your thoughts on how relatively low natural gas prices that we have experienced with current policies will affect the ability to deploy those other sources of clean renewable energies, for example, solar and wind power?
Well, thank you, Senator. So I'll focus on the natural gas portion. That's the technology program that I oversee. One general comment that I'll make is that these are long-term, important, and decadal challenges. And so we don't manage our technology programs based on the short-term fluctuations of the futures curve. I mean, we think these are important existential challenges, the development of the technologies that are going to drive the clean energy economy of the future. So all of these solutions, from wind to solar to natural gas to enhanced geothermal, nuclear, they remain core and important parts of the Department of Energy's technology program. That said, we have seen big fluctuations in natural gas prices that have come from a variety of sources, and that is something that we have to take into account. We look at the importance of price when we look at our public interest determination, the impact the price can have on consumers, on manufacturers, and a lot of the issues that you've heard here on the panel. So that is something we're focused on. We think that is very important. But over time, as you look at our research and development program, not only in the area that I manage, which deals with fossil energy, but throughout the Department of Energy, we certainly have a commitment to making sure that we're pushing those technologies here in the United States are going to be important for the clean energy economy of the future.
Thank you again.